You've turned their pages, now hear their voices. Today we have Susan. Hi, Susan.
Hello,
I'm going to let you introduce yourself.
my name is Susan Pogorzelski.
I
Exactly how
love
it.
your last name.
I probably should have considered a pen name, but this was years ago, and it is. My name is my name. Well, that's why I'm Susan Pogo across all my social media. Very easy.
I love that. And you're active on threads. You're super engaging there.
Yes,
And you mentioned TikTok. So you have a TikTok account as well.
I do. Yep, at Susan Pogo.
Let's dive in to the last letter because you have an important message that I think so many listeners can also relate to, and I think it just needs to be brought to attention.
Yeah, I really appreciate the opportunity. It was just so nice to reach out and have you be so receptive. So I want to say thank you and how nice it is to be here. So this is the last letter, not to be confused with Rebecca Yarrows. But if you want to confuse it, if you want to go ahead, that's okay too. So the last letter is my first full novel. I had written a novella slash middle grade book when back in 2012, 2013. And 2012, 2013 is when I was officially diagnosed with Lyme disease after 15 years of being misdiagnosed and undiagnosed. And so that was my real push. That was a dream. I really wanted to get my book out there in the world. So then, while I was in the middle of recovery from Lyme disease and the middle of a relapse, I ended up writing and publishing this book, The Last Letter. And this May is the 10-year anniversary of The Last Letter. And I'm celebrating with a special edition 10th anniversary hardcover and an anniversary hub on my website that is going to have some interactive features for not only people with chronic illness and Lyme disease, but for anybody who has had somebody with chronic illness or had, any kind of struggle in their life to be part of. It's going to have letters. You're going to be able to introduce yourselves and, write what you would like to say. The reason why it's called The Last Letter is because it is a story written in letters. So I should probably tell you about what it's about. So the main character, Amelia Linnelli, also known as Leah, she is a 15-year-old girl at the start of the book, and it is set in the 1999, so the start of the millennium. And she writes these letters to Dear Whoever You Are, and she puts them in a My Little Pony lunchbox. And that's her time capsule that she buries in the backyard garden. And that's her way of speaking to the world, her way of reflecting, her way of just, you know, learning what it is to grow up, getting all of her emotions out there, sharing her life with her brother and sister, her life with her best friend's brother that she has a crush on, her life with chronic illness that she is not even aware that she has. And so it's a little bit of a mystery. It's a little bit of a coming of age story, but mostly it is a testament to those of you who are experiencing chronic illness or some other malady.
I think it's so important when authors bring attention to like either mental health or a chronic illness or something that they're struggling with, because we're seeing so many, and not dissing on this at all because I'm a huge reader into this genre, but romance and dark romance and smut. Um, that there's stories and books by indie authors that can be relatable, and letting other people know that they're not alone in that, because especially with chronic illness, it feels like you're the only person to ever deal with XYZ because there's
Yeah.
not enough attention brought to it.
Yeah, that's exactly why I wrote it, because number one, it was a way for me to, because that was my experience. So it was a way for me to write about my experience without getting into memoir because I was still in the thick of that trauma. So it was a way for me to say everything that I wanted to say, everything that I needed to say in a way that was fictionalized. I was still, fiction is my jam. It's what I love. And so it's a way for me to tell my story through her voice. And that's exactly it, is to know that you're not alone. And that's, I think, what fiction does. I love reading romance. I love reading beach reads because they are just, light reads that kind of take us out of where we are. And it's healthy. It's very healthy for us, especially if we're going through something like that. But I think it's also really important that there are books out there that we read so that we recognize what other people are going through so that we have more empathy, because that's what books ultimately are for. They're for, those stories help us understand humanity. They help us understand another person's experience, and that breeds empathy, and we need that.
100%. I think that people get so stuck in judgment nowadays,
Hmm.
and looking down upon others, not realizing that other people are going through things, especially on social media. You get the keyboard warriors,
Yeah.
and they don't really care that there's somebody else on the other side of that and they're going through something. So,
And it's so easy, isn't it? Like, it's so easy. It's interesting because there's two sides of that spectrum, I find. You have the parasocial relationships, and then you also have like that separation where it's like there's too much, too close, but then there's also too much of that like separation of consciousness, I guess you can call it, where it's like you said, the keyboard warriors. And it's so easy to say, oh, this person lives in another state, lives in another country. I don't know this person. So let me say and do whatever I want without understanding that everybody's human. Everybody has their experiences. Everybody has their history, has their stories, makes them what they are. And, just having a conversation will maybe be that bridge. So yeah, I'm with you. I think that, a little empathy really goes a long way.
it really does. And I appreciate you being here and talking so much about your story and bringing awareness to Lyme's disease. Do you want to talk about your symptoms, if you feel comfortable,
Yeah,
um, of Lyme's disease and what made you think that there was something more going on than just maybe like a common cold or just randomly getting sick?
sure. So I also do have a nonprofit organization called Lyme Foundation that I started a year after I published the last letter. And that was, again, to help people realize that they're not alone, especially for the emotional toll of what a chronic illness can do for us. It makes us feel isolated. It makes us feel alone, especially when we don't know what's going on, because Lyme disease is one of the most misdiagnosed and misunderstood illnesses that there is. There are 476,000 new cases of Lyme disease every year. That is more than heart disease and breast cancer combined. That's insanity. And considering that the testing is inaccurate and that most doctors don't even acknowledge Lyme disease, it is kind of horrifying when you think about it. And that was my experience. So when I was around 12, 13 years old, I came down with what we thought was mono, and I was never quite the same since. And every year after that, it seemed like there was a new symptom. I had OCD tendencies. I had anxiety, agoraphobia, where I was almost like afraid to leave the house. I had headaches. In my 20s, I was diagnosed with PCOS. Um, I had, for a couple of years, ongoing upper abdominal pain to the point where my surgeon said, let's just take it out. All my tests were coming back fine. Everything looked like it was fine. And so the surgeon said, you're in so much pain, let's just take it out. And when he took out my gallbladder, it was so severely infected, it wasn't even an organ anymore. He said that it kind of just like fell apart in his hands. And that was in the fall of 2011. And in the 6 months after that, until 2012, is when I started to really decline. My heart was failing. I was passing out all the time. I was having extreme pain in my joints and my muscles. The fatigue has always been the worst. I was unable to really sleep or stay awake more than a few hours. I was sleeping 20 plus hours a day. I could only lift my head from the pillow just to see what time it was. It was bad. I mean, there was a list of 40 plus symptoms, and I was in the ER almost every week. I was going to specialist after specialist. I went to see a doctor, a neurologist in Johns Hopkins, and that was kind of the last straw because he had diagnosed me with everything from a vitamin deficiency to migraines, and basically he said, "There's nothing that we can do for you. There's nothing wrong with you," is what he said. Meanwhile, the light in my eyes was going out. My parents could definitely see I was kind of like a ghost of myself, a shadow of who I used to be. I'm a very bubbly, effervescent person. And the pain, the suffering, all the symptoms, the fatigue had literally drained the life out of me. And so I was essentially dying. But my parents kept fighting for me, and we kept doing research. And this was back in 2012, where, all you really had was Google, WebMD, and message boards. And so that's what we did. I just said, you know what, the symptoms aren't working. Let's keep looking at the stories. I want to see people's stories because there has to be somebody who has a similar story to mine. And sure enough, I found a message board where people were talking about Lyme disease. And I reached out and I said, can somebody please give me some information? That same day, I had gotten a message from my neurologist. I had requested, because I've been doing this research into Lyme disease, I had requested that they do some blood work for me. And I got an email back and he said, no, we can't do that. And I remember crying on the couch to my mom and saying, I can't do this anymore. I can't fight anymore. And my mom said, I'll keep fighting for you. And the very next morning, I got a message back from that message board saying, or giving me the list of a couple of doctors. And the very first doctor that I called, it was his wife, who was his nurse. It was a private practice. His whole family had Lyme disease. So he knew exactly what I was talking about, exactly what I was going through. I spoke to his wife for maybe 2 hours on the phone, and she just validated everything that I was going through, even symptoms I didn't know was symptoms. Like the tingling, the neuropathy, the hearing music, the tinnitus, the list of 40 symptoms that I had, she validated each one. And so 2 weeks later in May, I was sitting in their office, and sure enough, I was able to get a diagnosis of not only Lyme disease, but when you don't usually just have one disease with Lyme, it's usually you have comorbidities, co-infections. And so I was diagnosed with Lyme disease, Bartonella, Ehrlichia, and Babesia. And it took about 2 years for me to 2 to 3 years for me to start to feel better. And then I've had many relapses and flares since then, but I'm never going to be to that point that I was. And when I think back on where I was, it's like night and day. And I feel very grateful to even be here. And that doctor saved my life. And that's why I wanted to write the last letter, is to show that there is hope. Don't keep fighting for yourself. There's the tagline for my book is there's more than one way to be brave, and there is. When you're standing up for yourself and advocating for yourself, that is courage. That is brave.
The amount of gaslighting
Oh,
in
for sure.
in in pediatric care and healthcare, when you're like, no, something really is wrong, and they're like, oh well, lose weight, you'll be fine, or oh well, diet because your diet's shit.
Yep.
Um, the gaslighting, especially with women in general, because I don't know why healthcare workers listen to men, but they do. Like literally, you guys. I'm so sorry if you're a man listening. But you guys, when you have a cold, you can't get out of bed. Um, not to knock on you men because you guys have it rough too,
But
but women specifically,
it's a conversation that has to be had and
yeah,
something that has to be acknowledged.
yeah, women get gaslit all the time in
Yeah.
healthcare. And advocating for ourselves gets exhausting, especially when we're chronically sick and we have to keep pushing for a diagnosis so we can get better, because there is no getting better unless you have a diagnosis, because they don't
Exactly.
know how to treat it. So for our listeners, can you explain what Lyme's disease is?
So Lyme is a bacteria infection. For the co-infections, they might be a little bit different, but it stems from a tick bite. And so it is in every state. So don't ever let a doctor say that, oh, Lyme doesn't exist here, because Lyme and ticks, they don't know any borders. You have birds that fly that carry ticks. You have animals that cross different state lines. I've literally had doctors say, oh, Lyme can't exist here. I'm in Pennsylvania, so we are literally ground zero. The Northeast is ground zero, but it is in Texas, it's in Missouri, it's in California. It is literally in every state, and it is found in at least 50 countries worldwide. Um, so when a tick bites you, I'll just give you a little bit of education here. This is what I do. When a tick bites you, what happens is it's really important when you are removing a tick, don't ever squeeze the body. Because what happens when you squeeze the body is it actually, I don't know how to say this lightly, it throws up into your bloodstream. So if there is the bacteria in the tick, then it will literally regurgitate back into your bloodstream. So always remove it by the, like with tweezers, remove it by the head, by the little pinchers that they have. Also, ticks can be so tiny, they look like little poppy seeds, so you might not really know that you have a tick on you. So anytime that you're outside, whether it's in the fall and you're in the leaves, or if it's in the summertime and you're in like high grass or in the woods, make sure that you take a hot shower and throw your clothes not in the washer, but immediately in the dryer, because the heat is actually what kills the ticks. So what happens, the bacteria is actually a spirochete, similar to syphilis, in that it buries into the organs and the tissues. And that's why it's so difficult to detect. Lyme can be dormant for many years, and then something like an accident or an illness or a surgery, like in my case, can activate it again. So for me, I was okay. I was having issues and problems, but the surgery actually activated the Lyme again. And that's when, over those 6 months, I was declining very, very, very quickly. So it can, because it's a spirochete, it's a corkscrew shape, it buries into your tissues and your organs. A little bit scientific here, but
No, I love that you are educating people. And not only that, but you wrote the last letter that reflects not only your life, but maybe can help, especially young adults or in the adolescence, in maybe realizing that, yeah, they have symptoms too, and they've been gaslit by doctors, and they recognize themselves in your book. I think it's beautiful. I think that
thank you.
that's going to bring a lot of awareness. And not only that, but you took it further and you started a nonprofit.
Yeah, I felt like I had to. Because again, like I said, Lyme disease can be so, any chronic illness really. I don't want to just limit it to Lyme disease, but any chronic illness can be so isolating and so lonely. And the emotional toll is what really moves me and what I'm really passionate about. I don't ever want anybody to feel alone in what they're going through, whether it's a chronic illness or anything. And so that's really where Lyme Braves focuses. Stay strong, be brave. Don't give up on yourself. Don't give up on your life. And especially with, when you say gaslighting, especially with Lyme disease, there's so much gaslighting when it comes to the psychological symptoms and the neurological symptoms, because Lyme can also get in your brain. Obviously, it crosses the blood-brain barrier. And I had a when I was getting tested for my upper abdominal pain before my surgery, I had a gastroenterologist literally say, when I came out of, what was I getting? It was like an endoscopy or something. And I was coming out of it, and my mom was asking, "Did you find anything?" And he patted me on the shoulder and he said, "It's just anxiety and depression. You're fine. You're fine. It's just, you just have a little bit of stomach pain. It's nothing. It's just growing pains." Like, it's insane. And now, knowing what we know about Lyme disease, Lyme actually can create severe psychological issues like bipolar induced Lyme disease. I had bipolar induced Lyme that resolved with treatment. OCD resolved with treatment. And that's not to say every mental illness is a result of Lyme disease. I definitely don't want to say that. But when you look at the big picture, of all the physical symptoms and the neurological symptoms and the psychological symptoms, there is a bigger picture to look at, to consider. And, the body, if you look at the body as a whole, I mean, you have to look at the body as a whole and your experiences as a whole. And because there's just so much unknown, there's so much willful ignorance around Lyme and company. I just wanted people to know, you're not alone in this experience. It feels really lonely. It feels really isolating, but you're not alone in this experience.
I
You
think
know,
a lot of doctors, especially when you're going through a chronic illness, um, their first jump is it's just anxiety. It's just depression. Like,
yeah,
take these pills and it'll go away. And you're like, but I have a slew of other a slew of symptoms that
yeah,
don't match up with anxiety or depression or agoraphobia or, OCD. Um, and so you have to advocate for yourself, and it gets so frustrating, especially if you're a child.
yeah. And it's so easy to write it off. That's why, in my book, Leah does go to a doctor like that who literally says, oh, it's just growing pains. Well, what exactly is growing pains? What is that? So, and in the book, she feels so dismissed. And especially as a teenager, when you're trying to understand yourself, when you're trying to discover yourself, it is so easy to feel dismissed by the adults who claim to have authority in our lives, and when one of the main characters in the book is a psychologist, and she's able to talk to this psychologist and share her feelings, and he becomes a kind of confidant for her because you know he not only relates and connects to her, but he listens to her and doesn't call her crazy, doesn't dismiss her, doesn't just say, "Oh, it's just the growing pains of being a teenager." And I think that no matter how old you are, people need to be heard. People just want to be seen and listened to.
Most times, scooting back towards a previous topic, um, most time when you get Lyme's disease or you get a tick bite, you will get a red, um, a red
Yes.
target.
Yeah.
Yeah, a red target rash, and that's a huge indicator. But those aren't always present,
Yep.
and like you said, the ticks are so small. Like they can be so small; they're not always super fat.
Yeah.
Um, and I'm just so glad that you're bringing so much awareness with your nonprofit. Where does the money usually go towards? Like, where do you focus that on?
Well, right now I've kind of taken a step back from the nonprofit because I have this business with writing my books, and I also have another business that kind of brings my work of, helping people heal to another level. So Lyme Brave exists as a support system for awareness and education. And so right now it is to continue to have the website up to support and have those awareness campaigns. Um, so it's basically right now it is just supporting our ability to maintain a presence so that we can continue to educate, continue to bring awareness to people. And I do want to say that some proceeds from the last letter will always go towards Lyme Brave. Especially any book that is purchased at lymebravefoundation.org will automatically go towards Lyme Brave. At Lyme Brave, all of our programs or support programs are for helping you, again, feel like you're not alone, know that you're not alone. It's education, it's awareness, and it is caregiver and patient support because we don't want to forget the caregivers either. That is huge for me, especially having seen my own family go through supporting me. um, it's draining, it's tiring, it is lonely and isolating. Again, unless you've gone through it yourself, it's very hard to understand that experience, and we want to kind of shed light on that experience. So we have patient and caregiver support portals, including worksheets, education, resources that can help patients and caregivers navigate whatever it is that they're experiencing, whether it is, having trouble remembering medication, if it is having trouble keeping track of appointments, whether it is needing resources. For example, I was in my late 20s, early 30s at the time, and had my own house. And so I had trouble, keeping it clean. I had trouble cooking meals for myself. And so we have a list of resources that, can help in that kind of situation. So it's a resource and awareness network.
That's absolutely amazing that you started that. The Last Letter is not the only book that you have out, correct?
Correct.
Do you
Yes.
want to share a little bit about those as well?
Sure. So I had, like I said, I started with the middle grade, which is called Gold in the Days of Summer. It follows a 12-year-old girl named Annie in 1979, as she is on the threshold of her 13th birthday. And it is a coming of age story. So she is navigating the changes of her experience. And little Easter egg that I'll share here. The psychologist in the last letter is actually Annie's neighbor, a Vietnam War vet that Annie becomes close to in Go in the Days of Summer. So all of my books actually interconnect through a town called Montour City and navigates through the decades. So I also have a book called Lilac in Winter that follows 16-year-old Lilac as she is struggling with a terminal illness. And she is imagining her love story that she may or may not get to live with her best friend and next door neighbor, Nathan. And then I have a book called East of Everywhere that is set in the 1940s and 50s in the same town. And it follows an orphan named Janie who is separated from her brother and best friend. And she is making her way back to them across the state. And she finds herself in a small town called Montour City. And she meets up with a band of misfits and finds out what it is like to really find home.
Those like some really cute, cozy books. I
Thank you.
mean, granted, one of them sounds like a tearjerker. I'm not going to lie.
Well, you know what they say, tears in the writer, tears in the reader. And I will just say that I cried a lot when I was writing them. Yeah.
There you guys go. You need a tearjerker. There you go. Well, that's fantastic. Where can your books be found?
They can be found everywhere. Everywhere books are sold. You can request them from the library. They can be found on my website, susanpogorzelski.com. And if that's too much, you can actually go to the town's website. The town has its own website. You can explore it. Montours City, Montours City.com. And you can kind of see the citizens of the town across the decades and how the town was founded and all sorts of fun stuff.
That's amazing. Is the town a legit town?
No, nope.
I was like, wait, you're making this sound so real right now. It's okay, you guys. We all have blonde moments, okay? I was just like, I've never heard of this town, but she's making it sound so real.
It was okay. So when I was building the website, I got this idea a couple of years ago and I started building this website and I was making myself laugh. Like I have a whole like meet the citizens and here's where you can go for dinner and that kind of stuff, like all the places in the town that show up in my books. And I was literally just like making myself laugh and giggling at the whole thought of it. So I hope you guys enjoy it too.
Literally, that's a brilliant idea.
It was just fun.
That is so brilliant. That's like a project that I had in high school. And I've said this so many times. My English teacher was a bitch. Okay. She really was. But we had to do a project on the mockingbird. And we had to do like the towns and the houses and the streets. And it had to be like an exact replica, like an exact replica. And if it wasn't an exact replica, then whatever. But when you're reading a book, right, it doesn't always, it shows up how you want it, not
Yeah.
how the book is. I felt it, failed
Yeah.
the project.
See, I always want people to imagine themselves in my books, no matter how they are. And so, like, I'll have certain, like, characteristics and maybe some features, but I don't usually go deep into descriptions of my characters because I want you to imagine yourself as the main character or see yourself somewhere in the story. So yeah, imagine as you want. You can't force it anyway, right? Like how many times have you read a book and tried to force like seeing it how the writer envisioned it? It doesn't work.
Now, so is your character art on your website?
I know I don't have character art. Yeah, I try to keep that's specifically, I try to keep it as vague as possible. Like I'll share certain things like, oh, like her brown hair or like, her blonde hair or whatever. But I don't go into like features because I want it to be vague, purposefully vague.
I mean,
Um,
most of us just come up with our own
that's
depiction
exactly
of characters, anyways.
if it fits the plot, if it fits the character itself, the description, like I'll share descriptions, obviously. I don't want to like misinterpret myself and say that there's no descriptions. Of course, like there's a lot of descriptions in my books. But when it comes to the characters themselves, like one of the threads in my books with the Vietnam soldier, the doctor, is his eyes. So I do, in fact, mention his eyes, his deep blue eyes, but that is something that is like a token for him. It's something that all the characters notice. It's something that's like his hallmark. But I won't necessarily go into, oh, it's like strong jaw or like his nose. Like I don't go into that because I want you to imagine, as you naturally will, whatever it is that you imagine.
That's amazing. Where do you keep seeing yourself with your books? Like, is this something that you're going to continue doing? Or is your life taking a different path? Where do you see yourself going forward?
I'm going to continue with these books. I have three planned. So the first is the sequel to Lilac in Winter, which is telling Nathan's story. So there's Lilac and her best friend Nathan. So it's going to be telling Nathan's side of the story. And then I'm going to be writing a new novella that is actually going to be the Vietnam soldier slash the Leah psychologist story, because he actually, I did not plan any of this, but he actually is the thread through all of this. So I didn't plan any of my books. They just kind of happened and they just kind of all interconnected through the families and through the town itself. So this soldier, I mean, I never imagined him to be the main character. He's definitely not the main character in the books, but he's an important character, and he ended up being the main thread through all of these. So I have a couple of more books in the works, two coming out next year in 2027. And then I've been writing a novel for 20 years that is going to be like the penultimate. And um, we'll see. We'll see when that comes out. I call that the damn novel affectionately because it's been 20 years.
That is a really long time.
It is a really long time. Yeah. But that's not continuous writing, obviously. That's, putting it aside for years but it's always been in my mind, it's always been in my heart, and eventually that'll get written.
There's absolutely nothing wrong with putting a pin in your books and coming back to it. I mean, honestly, that's the best thing about writing is you can always go back to it.
Yeah. I agree. Yep.
Is there
Yep.
something that you would like? Oh, go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say, so I am continuing with that. And then obviously I'm going to be continuing with Lyme Brave, and I have another business as well.
Is if there's something that you can tell your readers or your listeners, what would that be?
Truly, that you're not alone. I mean, you really hit the nail on the head when you said, that no one's alone. And I think that books really bring us together and show us that, whether it's that we're all reading the same book, because of book talk or reels or whatever, or whether it is through the experiences in the book, it just goes to show how interconnected we are. And I think it's really important that we remember that rather than, looking at everything that divides us, looking at everything that separates us, recognizing like how interconnected we are and that there's more that, as cliche as it sounds, there's more that unites us than divides us. especially when it comes to the experiences that we have. Somebody might not have Lyme disease, but they might have another chronic illness. They might have cancer. They might have somebody who has an illness, a friend or a parent or somebody that a schoolmate, somebody that they know who is going through something similar. And reading a book, with that kind of experience is going to help them understand and have more compassion and have more empathy and understanding. And it's just going to bring us closer and closer together. So, I mean, you're not alone and no one's alone. And, just keep reading because reading books truly is a great uniter.
It really is.
Yeah.
There's just something magical. It takes away so much. You just go to a different place.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
don't have
And
to worry.
yeah. And I mean, just imagine that you can, create your life from that. These writers, we create from our imaginations. We create, it's just words in our scenes and characters in our mind that turn into a physical book with pages. It's kind of crazy, but that's the very same way that we create our lives. Imagining the best, knowing we're not alone is what makes us feel like we're not alone. Or I should say, feeling like we're not alone is what makes us remember that we're not alone. Like we literally create in the same way. So, yeah, I don't know if that made sense, but yeah.
No, 100% makes sense. Um, it's a crazy adventurous ride
Yeah.
for sure. Is there anything that you would like to add or touch basis with at all?
Can't think of anything, but I just really want to say thank you. Um, this was really great, not only to, share a little bit about me and my story and my books, but also I love talking to people. I love connecting with people. And, when you kind of put that out on threads, I trust my intuition. I get these nudges and I felt a real nudge to interact with you. And you've just been so great. So I just really want to say thank you.
I think that, behind every story, there's a more meaningful reason. Um, and those need to be told. I mean, so many people overlook indie authors, and I think it's so important that they don't because trad authors, big authors, we're indie authors too. So there's some great things out there.
If I can share one more quick story.
Yeah,
So
absolutely.
I did try to get a publishing deal for the last letter. I went into the query trenches and everything, and I got a lot of rejections. I got interest, but I also got a lot of rejections. And, I had a mentor who had passed. She was an agent, and she became a friend and a mentor, and she helped a lot of writers. Her name is Janet Reed. Some might know her name. She passed a couple of years ago. And I remember, emailing her and asking, what she thought, which path should I take? Should I continue to query or should I just publish on my own through my business? And I'll never forget what she said because I already had experience, publishing my own books. So I will never forget what she said. She said, Susan, she said, um, it's really up to you, but I'll tell you this. She said, people are going to be looking for answers in the middle of the night, and they're not going to know what they're looking for, but they're going to find your book, and your book will be like a candle in the dark. And I never forgot that because I knew that I wanted my story to be told the way that I needed to tell it, in the way that's realistic to those with Lyme disease, and that doesn't fit the traditional commercial mold. And so I ended up deciding to go this route of self-publishing or indie publishing. And the book got a review in Kirkus Indie. It won a Writer's Digest honorable mention. It was in Publishers Weekly. Like it has gone on to help so many people. Most importantly, I still to this day, 10 years later, get emails from people who have read it and who recognize themselves in it and who say, this book has, so to speak, lit a candle in the dark for me. And so I want to encourage every writer out there, if you have a story to tell, because we all have a story to tell, you never know. You could feel like you're getting silenced. It could feel like you're not reaching people, but you never know that one person, that one reader who's going to need that book, and the candle in the dark that you're actually lighting for people. So, yeah, don't give up.
I 100% have to agree. Um, if you publish something and you reach just one person, it is worth it. If you reach past that one person, all the more merrier, right? There's
Yep.
so many people who feel alone in this world, and you deserve to stay. You're important, you matter. Reach out, make friends via social media. I promise we're not all assholes, but I think I just think it is so, so important, especially like, you have imposter syndrome and every author struggles with it. And you're like, nobody's going to read it. Nobody's going to be able to relate. This is stupid. I'm stupid. I'm going to delete it. Don't delete it. Don't delete it. There's so many people who's willing to, better read it or arc read it and help you. And just go with it. You never know whose life you're going to touch and whose life you're going to keep here. So just keep going with it, stick with it, keep trying.
Absolutely, 100%.
And that's so beautiful what you're doing, because Lyme's disease is not hardly talked about enough. You know, it just isn't.
Yeah, definitely not in the mainstream. Yeah,
Yeah, and when you hear Lyme's disease, some might think like, oh, it's not that bad. No, it is that bad.
yeah, yeah.
It's
I mean,
debilitating.
when you get into what it really does to the body, what it really does to a life, it's joked about a lot, but when you really understand the true suffering and struggle that comes from it, like any true illness, it's a lot. And I think, just being mindful is really important. Mindful of that is really important.
I am so thankful for you for coming on and wanting to share your stories and sharing your books and bringing awareness to the last letter, that highlights Lyme's disease, and being able to openly talk about your struggles personally with this debilitating chronic illness.
Thank you so much. When I say it's an honor, I truly, truly mean it. It's so nice to meet you and so nice to be able to come on here and chat about a love of books and our experiences. And it's so nice. Thank you.
I could talk all day about books. You have such an important message, and I'm going to be sharing it everywhere because it's going to touch lives, and it already has touched lives. So just keep doing what
Thank
you're
you.
doing and keep publishing. I'm proud of
Thank
you,
you.
honestly. It
Oh,
takes a
thank
lot
you.
of courage to talk about something.
I appreciate that. I just hope that, there's a Emily Dickinson quote. If I could, what does it say? If I could ease one heart from aching, I have not lived in vain, or something like that. And that's exactly how I feel. So I really appreciate that.
That's absolutely such a beautiful quote. And can you retell your website name of where the town is?
Yes, it's called Montours City, Montours city.com. Or you can just go to brownbeaglebooks.com. It'll take you right to my author website.
I'm going to be going there because now I am so intrigued. I'm like, I need to know about this town that I legit thought was somewhere, and it's fine. We are
Oh,
normal today, you guys.
that makes me so giddy. You have no idea.
Well, I'm
I
glad it
love it.
makes you feel giddy because I feel like a freaking idiot. Like, you were talking so passionate about this town and the residents, and I'm like, I want to go there. Like, that sounds like a great, fun time.
Me too. That's why I write the books.
Honestly, your mind is brilliant. And just even the last letter being about letters makes it so much cuter.
Oh, thank
Like,
you.
you know what I mean? Cuter, but realistic.
Yeah. Yeah.
I appreciate you, Susan. If you guys need to know how to spell her last name, it is Pogorzelski. And on social media, it is just Pogo, Pogo.
Susan Pogo. Yep.
Yep. So go to the social medias and follow her. There's a little bit of ASMR. You guys are welcome. Thank you so much, Susan. I appreciate you being on here today and talking about your story.
Thank you. It's been so nice. I really appreciate it.
Thank you.